In this video, we're going to examine our fourth and final example of market structure, oligopoly. This is on the heels of perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition. And like monopoly and monopolistic competition, oligopoly is an example of imperfect competition. The salient characteristics of oligopoly include the fact that there are few producers, largely as a result of very high barriers to entry into the marketplace. And interestingly, the type of product that they sell is not a defining characteristic. They can sell either homogeneous or differentiated goods. Notice that few is in quotation marks here because few is difficult to define. The edge between monopolistic competition and oligopoly is sometimes hard to determine. Where does few end and many begin? Economists have developed the Herfindahl Concentration Index to answer that very question, but that is beyond the scope of our analysis. We're going to take a look at markets that are consistently considered oligopolies. Some examples include the cereal market, domestic beer, airlines, steel, and U.S. cell phone service. You might note that the number of brands in those markets may be many, for example, cereal, but it is owned by three firms in essence, dominated by those three firms: Kellogg's, Post, and General Mills. Unlike our other three market structures, oligopolies have proven fairly difficult for economists to address. In the past, a kinked demand curve model was used, but that has largely fallen out of favor, and the contemporary analysis is one of using game theory. A very interesting and unique approach to a strategic analysis of decision-making. Game theory is marked by the notion of mutual interdependence of the decision-makers. In an oligopoly, this seems appropriate because when there are a few firms rather than many firms, the decision of one individual firm will depend upon what they believe the other firm is going to do. As a practical note, on the AP exam, if you ever see the term mutual interdependence, rest assured that that question is talking about the oligopoly market structure. Perhaps the most famous game that has been subject to game theoretic analysis is the two-player game of Prisoner's Dilemma, represented in the payoff matrix on this slide. One of the most important things to do when confronted with a payoff matrix is to determine whose payoffs belong to who. And in this case, the first number in each cell refers to the payoff to player A, and the second number in each cell refers to the payoff to player B. The story goes that these two players have been arrested in conjunction with a crime that they have allegedly committed together. The DA approaches both of them and basically explains if neither of them confess, that they don't have enough evidence against them to send them to jail for quite some time. So each player would lose 1 year in jail, that they would go to jail for 1 year. If they were to both confess, however, they would go to jail for 2 years each. If player A were to not confess, while player B did confess, we would end up in this lower left-hand quadrant, and player B would find that because of their cooperation with the district attorney, they get off scot-free, a positive utility to them. But that evidence is then used against player A, who did not cooperate, did not confess, and so player A would go to jail for 10 years. On the other hand, if player A were to confess, while player B kept quiet, player A would get off scot-free, and player B would go to jail for 10 years. The question is, what should these two players do? At first glance, it seems that these players have an incentive to cooperate with one another and not confess, resulting in both of them going to jail for only 1 year. They keep quiet, the DA doesn't have enough information about either of them, and is only able to jail them for a relatively minor offense. However, on closer analysis and thinking strategically, a different outcome results. Let's take a look at it from player A's perspective. player A is going to engage in some mutually interdependent decision making because whatever A can't choose an outcome in the table. A can only choose to either confess or not confess. The outcome is going to depend on A's decision and B's decision. So A thinks about this a little bit and says, well, if player B were to confess, I can eliminate looking at any of the payoff matrix from do not confess. And then A's choice is between going to jail for 2 years and going to jail for 10 years. And clearly, confessing is a better option in this situation because 2 years in jail is better than 10 years in jail. On the other hand, if player A says, I don't believe player B is going to confess, but rather will not confess, A looks at, well, then my choice is between getting off scot-free and going to jail for 1 year. And clearly, getting off scot-free is a better choice, and confess is the best choice in either situation. So we can say that player A has a dominant strategy to confess, that under all circumstances, player A will be better off confessing than not confessing. Player B has a similar analysis. Player B considers their decision on the basis of what they think player A is going to do. If player B believes that player A is going to confess, then player B has a choice between going to jail for 2 years and going to jail for 10 years. Clearly, confessing is the better option there. If, on the other hand, player B believes that A will not confess, player B is confronted with either getting off scot-free or going to jail for 1 year. Again, confessing is the better strategy because getting off scot-free is better. So under all circumstances, player B has a dominant strategy to confess as well. And according to this analysis then, since both players have a dominant strategy to confess, they end up in the upper left-hand quadrant of this matrix and go to jail for 2 years each. This is disappointing, however, because this is a Pareto suboptimal outcome. There is an opportunity in the matrix where they are both better off, namely, if they are both keeping their mouths shut, then they'll only go to jail for 1 year each. So we have this temptation on the part of both prisoners to collude, to act together to better themselves. They'd both like to not confess, but there's an obvious and strong incentive to cheat. For example, a player might promise over and over, I'm not going to confess, I'm not going to confess, trying to convince the other player to also not confess. But at the last minute, both players would probably choose to confess to try to secure the better option for themselves following their dominant strategy. This upper left-hand quadrant of them both confessing is what is known in game theory as a Nash equilibrium. That is, this would likely be a stable outcome in this game because neither player has an incentive to defect from this position unilaterally or one-sided. For example, once they're in this quadrant, player A would not want to change their strategy from confess to not confess because that would mean going to jail for 10 years instead of 2 years. Similarly, player B would not unilaterally decide to not confess because that would involve them going to jail for 10 years. So a Nash equilibrium is a stable outcome where movement away from that by one player will make that player worse off, and so the player has no incentive to leave a Nash equilibrium. The prisoner's dilemma has been widely applied in fields such as political science, psychology, and even biology. Of course, we're most interested in its application to economics, and so let's consider this oligopoly of the airline industry, dominated by two firms, American Airlines and Delta Airlines. Here we have a payoff matrix that represents the profits to American Airlines and to Delta, respectively, in each of the cells. The first number in each cell therefore represents American Airlines' profit, the second number represents Delta's profit. Given that these firms are rational, self-interested decision makers, they really only care about their total profit and are not concerned with the profit of the other firm. If these two firms are considering a new policy of possibly charging for a bag for passengers to carry on board with them, we can see that the payoff matrix essentially makes sense. If both of them charge bag fees, then both of the firms are going to be considerably more profitable than they would be if neither of the firms charged bag fees. But of course, the most profit could be found if one firm decides not to charge a bag fee, while the other firm does decide to charge a bag fee. So American Airlines would have a profit of $20,000 if it chose not to charge a bag fee, while Delta simultaneously decided to charge a bag fee. This might be an appropriate time for you to pause the video to see if you can appropriately analyze this two-person game, to see if you can predict the outcome that is suggested by the payoff matrix. Let's consider first whether American Airlines has a dominant strategy. To do so, let's imagine that American Airlines engages in some conditional thinking. So under the condition that Delta decides to charge a bag fee, American Airlines will ignore these payoff matrices over here and instead focus their attention here. They've got a choice between earning a $20,000 profit if they do not charge a bag fee and an $18,000 profit if they do charge a bag fee. Clearly, American Airlines would rather have no bag fee if Delta does charge a bag fee. Let's take a look at the other condition though. If Delta were to charge no bag fee, American Airlines now has a choice of $5,000 profit if they do charge a bag fee and $8,000 profit if they don't charge a bag fee. Again, no bag fee is a better choice for American Airlines in both situations, so we would be confident in saying that American Airlines has a dominant strategy to not charge a bag fee. Similarly, Delta would engage in the same type of strategic thinking. Conditionally, if American Airlines did charge a bag fee, Delta would be choosing between $14,000 profit if it charged a bag fee and $18,000 if it didn't. Clearly, it would not charge a bag fee. On the other hand, if American Airlines does not charge a bag fee, Delta is choosing between $6,000 in profit with a bag fee and $10,000 in profit without a bag fee. Again, no bag fee is a dominant strategy for Delta. Under all circumstances, Delta is better off charging no bag fee. And following these dominant strategies, both firms would find themselves in this lower right-hand quadrant, which is a Pareto suboptimal outcome. They would much rather work together to collaborate and earn considerably higher profits by both charging bag fees. This is somewhat difficult to achieve, however, because no bag fee for both companies is a Nash equilibrium. Notice that American Airlines has no incentive to unilaterally change its mind to charging a bag fee because that would lower its profits. Similarly, Delta Airlines, earning $10,000, has no incentive to unilaterally change its mind to charging a bag fee because that would lower its profits to $6,000. The only way companies benefit is if they collude, if they act together and simultaneously change their decision to a bag fee. However, there's an incentive to cheat here. Notice that both charging a bag fee is not a Nash equilibrium. American Airlines has an incentive to cheat by unilaterally changing its strategy to no bag fee to earn $20,000 in profit, while Delta would unilaterally change its strategy to no bag fee to earn $18,000 in profit. So this outcome is not a stable equilibrium. Both companies have an incentive to cheat, but they know that if one company cheats, the other company will cheat. They'll end up back in the Nash equilibrium and both earn lower profits than they could earn if they were working together. It's important to note that not all games are prisoner's dilemma games, that is, games that have both players with dominant strategies that result in Pareto suboptimal outcomes. Again, let's pause the video and give you an opportunity to analyze this game by answering the questions posed. The first question is, does Sparky have a dominant strategy? Well, it seems that we have to use the same analysis type by taking a look at conditional thinking. If Sparky has to choose between locating on the east side and locating on the west side, he's is going to think about what Monkey Wrench Auto Repairs is going to do. If Sparky assumes that Monkey is going to locate on the east side, then Sparky's garage has a choice of $200 in profit or $100 in profit. The west side is a better option. However, on the other hand, if Monkey Wrench locates on the west side, Sparky has the option of earning $125 in profit by also locating on the west side, or $300 in profit by locating on the east side. So it seems that it depends on what Monkey Wrench Auto Repair's decision will be for Sparky to end up with the better option. That is, Sparky does not have a dominant strategy. Their choice will alter with the choice of Monkey Wrench Auto Repairs. Now let's turn our attention to Monkey Wrench Auto Repair's decision. Again, engaging in conditional thinking, if Monkey Wrench believes Sparky is going to locate on the east side, Monkey Wrench has a choice of $150 in profit or $125 in profit. Locating on the east side is a better choice for Monkey if Sparky's garage also locates on the east side. On the other hand, if Sparky's locates on the west side, Monkey Wrench will have $250 in profit by being on the east side and $100 in profit by locating on the west side. So it does turn out that Monkey Wrench has a dominant strategy to always be on the east side. The profits of locating itself on the east side for Monkey Wrench are always better than the profits would be if they located on the west side. One of the interesting characteristics of this game is that despite the fact that Sparky's doesn't have a dominant strategy, we can predict the outcome of the game. Sparky's doesn't have a dominant strategy, but knows that Monkey Wrench does have a dominant strategy to always locate on the east side. So Sparky will believe Monkey Wrench will locate on the east side, and then we'll have a choice between locating on the east side and earning $100 in profit, or locating on the west side and earning $200 in profit. So Sparky's will locate on the west side, but this is not a dominant strategy because if Monkey Wrench decided to locate on the west side, Sparky's would rather locate on the east side to earn $300 in profit. Is this lower left-hand quadrant a Nash equilibrium? Well, Sparky would not want to unilaterally change its decision and lower its profit. Neither would Monkey Wrench want to change its position unilaterally and lower its profits. So this lower quadrant is a Nash equilibrium, a point from which neither side would unilaterally choose to move from. However, it is not Pareto suboptimal. There isn't another outcome that would mutually benefit both players. So this is a very stable outcome in this game. I hope this analysis of oligopoly and game theory has been helpful, and as always, if you have any questions, see me after class or at extra help.